Okay, so today we're gonna make this skin shader, the skin BSDF. Blender doesn't have one built in, just like it has all these other shaders. There's like a hair shader. I don't know, you would think there might be a skin shader because there's a hair shader, but who knows, maybe there'll be one in the future. I kind of find it fun to actually make my own, but I'm gonna show you how to make your own, and once you build one of these, you shouldn't need to make them anymore because I'll show you how to actually like put it in your asset library and just bring it in every time you need to use it. So let's start here. Here we go. So skin BSDF, you're gonna build this shader. I'm gonna show you how to create a skin tone slider that will go anywhere from very fair skin to darker black skin, and I also implemented a sweat slider because skin is not always rough and soft like this. Sometimes it's a little bit shinier and glossier. So depending on how much you have this, and you can actually turn this up to however you want to do. And also, finally, we have this secondary color, secondary mix, which basically just says, hey, this is cool and all, but maybe I want to make something like an alien or a different creature that doesn't just have typical skin tones. So you can change this secondary mix. So 0 meaning, well, I'm going to use the skin tone slider, up to 1 meaning I'm going to just use whatever color skin I would like to have. So say my character has purpley pink skin, or they have green skin. And it doesn't have to be used solely for this. It can also be used as, again, just a mix. So say you want to stylize and show my character's really angry. You can make this like red skin and just give it a little bit of the mix. And then you have a character blushing, or your skin tone is more red. And it's all controlled by this BSDF. Okay, I'm in a brand new Blender file, and I just set up a quick little shape, nothing crazy, right? A beveled cube, and I took everything out of the scene, no camera, no original light, and I added in 2 of my own lights here, just some area lights to give it a quick little lighting setup, just to have something more interesting. Also, just so you know what's going on, is I have a HDRI here, from HDRI Haven, of course, and just to give it a little bit of directional, or a little bit of ambient lighting going on, and I just have this turned off just so we have something a little more visually appealing to look at. One other thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to add on, just because this is generally low poly, I'm going to add on a subdivision surface here, just at 1 level. That's fine, just to give it a little more geometry to work with. All right, clean slate, no texture. Let's get started. So shader editor, let's go. So first, some housekeeping stuff. Let's just talk about the properties of skin. So we are going to pull up here a skin chart that I downloaded. Okay, so I downloaded this skin JPEG, and I'm not sure where I got it, but you can search for similar charts on Google Images if you want to find something like this. But what's important here is just this shader here. This sort of, think of this like its own color ramp, and we're going to sort of create this as a color ramp. I'm going to use this bottom one down here. We're going to implement this into a color ramp. So that would be the first step. So let's do it. Add in a color ramp, and we're going to go from left to right. So click on your little slider here, and then you can click down in this box to bring up the color you want, and we're just going to start pin dropping colors. So we're going to go from the farthest left, which will end up looking really fair under light. It'll look really, really white. And then the farthest one, we can just click over here, and we're starting to build this out. You don't have to use all the tones here, but the closer you can get, the more it's going to help. And really, you don't have to, like 3 or 4, you're already getting to pretty good. So how I did this is how I had another one here is you just click this little plus button. So click right there, and you have one right in the middle, and it tells you the position right here. So just like we did before, just going to go down and just start clicking them. And the more you add them, the more it'll sort of fill in this gradient here. I'm going to add one at 0.25, which will be the position. So it'll be 0.25 across this spectrum. So I'll click there again, and I'm going to just click something that's roughly in the 0.25 section. and I'll add another one. And as you can see, it starts adding these, like, it has 1, then 0.5, and then 0.25, and then 0.125. It keeps dividing by 2, so if I were to keep on, like, adding more of these in, it'll continuously work its way down to 0, like an asymptote would. I'm just going to get rid of these, and for now, I'm going to show you how to do this. So, okay. So as opposed to sort of jumping, making its way down to 0, I'm just going to add another one, and then with this selected, you can actually just type in this box 0.75, and it will change that to the position, which would be 3/4 of the way across, or 0.75. And again, you can just eyedrop this color right about there. I'm going to choose this one just because I think we can get a little bit of darker tones going on, because it tends to veer onto the whiter side if you just keep going over here. So it's good to have darker tones. I'm going to pull this down just a little bit. Okay, so we have generally a color spectrum here. A quick tip here, if you want to stay organized, if you have a node selected, if you just hit F2 on your keyboard, you can rename it so they don't all just say color ramp. So I'm just going to hit F2 and rename this to skin tone. Perfect. So now I have a slider that represents the skin tones. I'm going to drag the color right into the base color, and then also right into the subsurface color. And with the Node Wrangler add-on, you can just hold Shift and right click and drag, and you can put these into one little node here. That's just going to be, it'll put it into one node, which basically says whatever goes in here is going to affect both the base color and the subsurface. And we'll get to why that's important in just a minute. Okay, cool. So we have our skin tones. Now we have to start making some of the material. So the thing about skin is, generally sort of the secret sauce is I keep my roughness pretty high, about 0.85. And I also keep the specular high, because think about it. The skin is not very reflective, but it does bounce a lot of light back. So skin reflects a lot of light, but it's not very, it's kind of rough in a way. So once you bring up the specular, we're starting to look at some decent skin. The only thing where we're missing is the subsurface. Just make this like 0.125, something like that. That'll just give it a little bit of that subsurface look. And this also works great with cycles, by the way. Just remember that once you start introducing subsurface scattering, it takes a long time to sort of start calculating this light. So we're gonna just keep an easy for now. All right, so we have that going on. Next thing, let's add in a noise texture, because this sort of just breaks it up a little bit. Remember, Control-Shift-Click, we can sort of view this. Okay, so I have my noise texture here, and I'm just gonna give it how I like to make the noise texture. I bring the scale down and go to like about 2, but then I really crank the detail up and then the roughness as well, just to make some stuff happening on sort of a smaller scale, but sort of retain a lot of that detail. And we can give it a color ramp, sure, and just crunch these a little bit just to bring out some more contrast. Now this is just going to be a little bit of skin detail that we're not really going to see a whole lot of, so we have to think of roughness values here, right? Where it's going to be black will be perfectly reflective, and where it's white will be perfectly non-reflective. And neither of these are really what we want. So remember what we talked about over here with our roughness being around 0.85. We can think of it the same way here, but think of it as 0.85 being in the middle, and these are like higher and lower bounds. So how rough do we want this to get? Well, I don't ever want it to get to 0.1, so I'm gonna say on max it'll go to like 0.95 max. And on the lowest bit of roughness, I definitely don't want to go to 0, so I'm gonna say it's gonna go to like 0.7 maybe, and this might be pushing it. Actually, we'll start with 0.65, and you'll be able to see here right away that the actual roughness, you're going to be able to tell right away. So once I drag this color into the roughness here, and I Control-Shift-Click back on this, you can start to see where like it's reflective, and it just is a little too much. Just like right off the bat, it's like, okay, that's a lot. So what we're going to do is actually bring up this lower bit of roughness, bring this up a little bit here, a little closer to 1, just to where it gives you a little something, right? A little texture going on the side, but it's not overwhelming. And this is starting to look like some good skin here. All right, so we got this. So now, we have our skin tone slider, which we will activate with a value node. So this is going to control the skin tones, all right? So if we slide this texture left to right from 0 all the way to right, it'll give us from white skin to black skin. And this is a quick way to create this texture. All right, so now we have the skin tone slider, which, by the way, also affects the subsurface scattering color. Remember that. So we also want to be able to control, remember from the beginning, we want to be able to control how shiny is your character. Like, sometimes is your character going to be sweaty, or are they going to be not sweaty and not reflective? So let's mix this in here. So we'll grab a math node, and what we want to do is take all the values here from this color ramp, and we're going to multiply them by 1. So nothing changed, right? Nothing's changed at all. We're going to give them a slider, and this slider is going to go from 0 to 1 to not sweaty to fully sweaty. All right, it's kind of gross, but just hang with me here. So add a map range, and what this means is we're going to map the range of this value from 0, from not sweaty to sweaty. So we're going to map the range of 0 to 1. So it'll go from 0, from here, let's read this the whole way down, right? From 0 to 1, that's good. Meaning that from the top, so it's kind of an inverse relation, right? Because shininess is lower, whereas more rough is higher. So if it's 0, it's going to be perfectly reflective, whereas if it's 1, it will be perfectly not reflective. We actually want to flip that, right? Because if we're thinking of how sweaty our character is, it's actually going to be the opposite. If it's not sweaty at all, 0, that's going to mean it's fully not reflective, if that's making sense to you. So that means we just have to flip this. So basically, from 0 to 1 is actually just going from 1 to 0. So if I put 0 on here, this is going to give me an output of 1. If I put 1 here, it's going to give me an output of 0. There's a lot of ways to get here, but this is actually going to help us out because we can tweak these values here in a bit. So basically, if I connect this in to the multiply, we're going to start seeing that if our character's not sweaty with 0, it's going to be perfectly not reflective. If he's fully sweaty, our character is perfectly reflective. Now again, this is way too much, right? So we're going to dial this back. So 0, that's perfect. Where it's 1, we don't want it to be 0, perfectly reflective. Let's just give this a little more. So let's say it's really going from 0 to 1, but that means it's really going from 1 maybe to like 0.8. And we can drop this down. This is max sweat, right? Like maximum sweat level. And just if you hold shift and click and drag, you can go slowly till you find something that's like a nice maximum sweat. And yeah, we'll stay here. Maybe go a little bit lower, just to give you a little more control. Oops, 0.4. All right, that's cool. That's like maximum sweat right there. It's a weird way of thinking it, but. And I'll just put this back to 0. And this just gives you that control. Remember, at the end of the day, it just gives you a little more control over your character. And you don't have to ever go up to 1, but if you want to, you have the availability. It's really self-control, you know? How much sweat are you allowing your character to have? Don't ever go the whole way to 1. Do not go the whole way to 1. Okay, you can if you want to. I don't care, but I'm going to keep that back at 0. And the last thing we have to implement here with our character is the secondary color option. So basically, this is going to affect the skin tone, right? The color. So this is actually pretty simple. We're going to do a mix RGB, and we're going to put our skin tone color into the slot 1, and then we're going to add just an RGB. So this is just a color. RGB is just a color node, right? And we're going to bring this color into slot 2. Awesome. Bring this over here. And then we want one more value node. And I'll explain what this is all doing in a second. This value is going to be our secondary slider. So this is going to control our factor. Perfect. And for now, you have to remember that color 1 equals 0 on the factor, and color 2 equals 1. That's just a fact here. So I'll keep this at 0 for now. And I'm just going to take this color output and put it right into here, so that way it affects both of them. So if I change this slider, so it's going to go from 1, or from 0. So when it's 0, it's saying, hey, let's use this skin tone. And when it's 1, it's going to say, hey, let's use this tone, in which we can make anything we want. So for the sake of this, let's make it like this weird color here. And then once we drag this to 1, now it's using that as the skin tone. So we'll keep that at 0 for now. And look at this. Our skin BSDF is created. So you're done. Congrats, we got here. So I'm going to just drag everything that's inside the node. These pieces here on the left are actually not going to be inside the node. They're just going to be there to help you create the node initially, and we can delete them later. So for now, just highlight everything to the left of your material output and to the right of these nodes, right in the middle, and just Control G. And you've created a node. And let's do a little bit of housekeeping here with our inputs. So make sure you go on the right here to the node tab, and then we can look at everything. And we'll just sort of, these all have pretty default names, so just go down through and name these how you want them to be displayed. So factor, this top one, this is actually going to be our skin tone, so we can just name it right there. And again, you can check because you can see, you can follow the path and make sure it's going into the right one. So yeah, this is our skin tone slider. Perfect. Value. Where's value going? That's the second one. Aha, value goes into the map range, which we remember controls our sweat. So we can call this sweat. This is our sweatiness, right? Heck, we can call it that, sweatiness. Sure. Color 2. Aha, color 2 is that RGB we set up. So this is going to be purely the secondary color. And finally, this factor is going to be our secondary mix. Because remember, again, if we follow this out, secondary mix goes the whole way to this factor, and it mixes in the secondary color. How much of it are we using? Cool. And the last thing we can do over here is just reorganize this again from most important down. Actually, it looks good. I'm just going to flip these two with these arrows over here. I'm going to put secondary color at the very bottom. And literally that just is the order of these things over here. So if I hit tab to go out of this, just like when you're in the 3D view and you go from object mode to edit mode, if I just tab out of this, we have our node over here. And like I said earlier, we can just delete these. And this is how you create a node, which is cool. So here's our skin shader, and we can go into our properties, and then right here, just call it something fancy. If you want to be real fancy, just go ahead and call it skin BSDF. Oh, I can't spell today. BSDF. Perfect. And it's going to reflect it right up here. And give it a color. Why not? Just to help it stand out a little bit. Something like this. Yes. Alrighty. So now, if you look over here, we have a skin BSDF slider. And we can pick the skin tone and the secondary mix. Let's set the secondary mix. You want to keep that at 0 for now. And sweatiness can be at 0. So you actually can go through, and just to save yourself some time, if you tab back into the skin BSDF and we grab these group inputs, as you're clicking on these, you can actually set these default values. So at default, we don't want our character to be fully sweaty. It'll be 0. And at default, we don't want to use the secondary mix. That's also going to be 0. And the secondary color can be whatever you want. I'm going to keep it red for now, just because I want that to be the default color. And this skin tone, that's actually fine to stay at 0.5. And that's personal preference. I just want it to stay there. So if I tab back out of it, I have this skin BSDF. And it's still in the scene, so if I were to just delete this entirely, I can actually add this in. So by search, I can just search skin BSDF, and bam, it's right here. Just like you could search any other shader, although it's not going to be in this, it's going to be down here in your groups, just because it doesn't have a natural home, just like it would sit in with the rest of the shaders. But again, you can just add them in here, and there, it's in your Blender file. Now make sure you're using it so it saves. But there, you have a skin BSDF shader. Okay, cool. So we've made the skin shader. So if you want to take the knowledge you've learned today and hop off this video and go implement it or use it as you want, feel free. But I'm going to keep talking if you want to stay with me, and we're going to show you some cool ways to implement the skin shader, and how in creating it in its own node like this, it can actually help out tremendously. organization, making it faster for you in the future to create these shaders, and also how you can use these with multiple characters. So let's save this. So I'm gonna just save this. So here's this character scene that I have, and it's just like a dude that I made, and I have these spheres over here, which I'm actually gonna go ahead and give these a little shade smooth action. All right, let's look at it in render view, right? No materials. So we're gonna add a quick skin shader to this guy, and because we've already made the skin shader, it is literally as easy as we will go. Let's bring it in, right? So you've saved the skin shader. It's in your asset library. So you're gonna go append. You're gonna find your directory that you put it in, and then instead of bringing in a material, you want to make sure you're bringing in the node that we built, which will be in the node tree, and it's right here, that skin BSDF. So we'll append that in, and now we can just go ahead and start making our skin. So we'll make a new material, and we'll call this the skin. And then, as opposed to using this principal BSDF, and delete that out, I will add in my skin BSDF, or over here in the group, it will be over here. See, I already brought it in once, but that's why it brings it in a second time as a 0.001. But you'll just have this, so you can just select the BSDF here and just plug it right up, and it will start to look good right from the beginning. And then you can just go ahead and pick a slider here, however dark you want the skin tone to be, or however light you want it to be. And again, say for whatever reason your character is not a traditional color, so we'll just say, hey, let's make a secondary color. So we'll pick 1, and then you can go ahead and pick the color of your character. Say he's like a green dude from space or something, or say your character is blue. You know, it's whatever you want to do. And again, you don't have to go 1 or 0. You can do somewhere in the middle. So we can just do like 0.25, and we can say, hey, this character is a little bit blushing or something. You make the character skin a little bit red. For the sake of this, I'm just gonna leave it at 0 like that, and then you can just find the skin tone that fits the character that the character needs. Perfect. Now we'll apply this to this one. Let's actually make a new material, and we'll call this skin generator. Perfect. And then delete that guy out of there. And let's actually apply it to all these materials. So I'm just going to go ahead and C for circle select. I'm going to go ahead and do a C for circle select and just grab all these guys here. And then escape, and then shift click on this one to make it the active object. And then with Control L, we can link the materials. So all these are going to reference this material, and they're all using the skin generator. So now we'll add in that skin BSDF again for our skin generator. And where it gets really cool is now, if we were to use this object node, this object info node, because it has this random part to this node, we can actually randomly assign a skin tone based off of the object ID. So it's going to give us random skin tones across the board. And this is going to be awesome if you're doing like a crowd simulation, or just a bunch of random characters, or say you just make one character, or I guess say you need a crowd, or you need a large grouping of characters, but you don't want to make all those assets. Well, you can maybe make one character and maybe make a couple of sliders to do a procedural character, and that way you can use something like this to develop a diverse group of characters in your crowd pretty quickly. So there you have it, the skin BSDF node right here. Pretty easy to make, and again, I just want to say that I do read all the comments in the comment section, so leave a comment, let me know what you want to see. Your words are heard, so I hear what you're looking for, I hear what you want to see, and I'm trying to answer those questions as I can and make those tutorials for you. So leave a comment, let me know what you're looking for. So thanks again, and I hope this helped you out.